You know, if someone had told me that the downfall of galactic civilization would start with a honey badger wearing tactical armor, I probably would have laughed. Then again, anyone who spent 5 minutes dealing with humans should have seen this coming from parsecs away. The whole mess began in Conference Room Zeta 7 of the Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council, a place so mind-numbingly bureaucratic that it makes the DMV look like a thrilling adventure. Picture this: 17 different alien species sitting around a holographic conference table, all pretending they care about interspecies wildlife protection, when really, they're just here for the free synthetic coffee and the chance to complain about humans. "Order, order!" wheezed Council Chairman Blurp, a gelatinous blob from Kepler 186f who looked like someone had crossed a jellyfish with a filing cabinet. His translator box crackled with static as he continued, "We are here to discuss application number 4,847,293 from the Terran Federation regarding the classification of, and I quote, honey badgers as Class 7 therapeutic companions." The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems and what sounded suspiciously like Council Member Grickstall taking a nap. You could practically hear the collective eye rolling, which is impressive considering half the species present didn't technically have eyes. Vextar, the Council's resident skeptic and proud owner of 4 arms that he used primarily for dramatic gesturing, leaned forward in his crystalline chair. He resembled what would happen if you crossed a praying mantis with a very irritated accountant. "Let me get this straight, Iri," he said, his translator struggling with what humans call sarcasm. "The same species that turned caffeine into a religious experience wants us to believe that one of their most aggressive predators is somehow therapeutic?" "The documentation appears to be in order," mumbled Secretary Hufgach, a 4-legged bureaucrat who looked like a cross between a horse and a tax auditor. "Complete with medical studies, psychological evaluations, and testimony from, quote, 17 very satisfied customers," end quote. Lurpa's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been confusion or indigestion. "And remind me again, what exactly is a honey badger?" The holographic display flickered to life, showing a compact black and white creature with the approximate attitude of a chainsaw having a bad day. The council members leaned in, studying the innocent-looking animal with the kind of suspicion typically reserved for humans offering to help with something. "According to the Terran Wildlife Database," Hufgach read from his tablet, "the honey badger, scientific name Mellivora capensis, is described as, and I quote, basically a furry embodiment of pure rage that evolved specifically to ruin everyone's day," end quote. He paused, his horse-like ears twitching. "That's an unusual scientific classification." Vextar's 4 arms began their familiar dance of exasperation. "Therapeutic? This creature looks like it was designed by committee specifically to cause maximum chaos. Look at those claws, those teeth, that expression that clearly says, 'I will end you and everyone you love.'" "The humans insist it's for emotional support," Blurp said weakly. "Of course they do," Vextar muttered. "Next they'll be telling us that their nuclear weapons are actually very advanced fireworks for celebrating birthdays. Little did they know that was literally application number 4,847,294, but that's a story for another day. The council spent the next hour debating the finer points of Terran mental health practices, completely missing the most important detail of all. They were dealing with humans who had just submitted 47 pages of perfectly legal documentation to classify what was essentially a furry missile as a therapy animal. They should have known right then that this wasn't going to end well. Now let me introduce you to the man who would single-handedly prove that giving humans access to intergalactic bureaucracy was humanity's greatest achievement and the galaxy's biggest mistake. Meet Jake Morrison, mining engineer extraordinaire, currently stationed on asteroid Kepler 442b, which is basically a floating rock so boring that watching paint dry would be considered premium entertainment. Jake was the kind of guy who could fix a fusion reactor with a paperclip and some creative swearing, but put him in a situation with nothing to blow up or repair, and he became dangerously creative. Think of him as a combination of MacGyver and that friend who always says, "Hold my beer, and watch this," right before something spectacular goes wrong. On this particular Tuesday, which was indistinguishable from every other day on a chunk of lifeless space rock, Jake was sitting in his prefab habitat, scrolling through his personal messages with the enthusiasm of someone watching grass grow in slow motion. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, his mining equipment was running perfectly for once, and he'd already reorganized his tool shed 3 times this week. That's when the message from the Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council popped up on his screen. "Well, well, well," Jake muttered to himself, a dangerous grin spreading across his face. "Looks like someone finally approved my therapeutic companion application." Now, you might be wondering why a mining engineer on a remote asteroid would need therapeutic companions. The answer is simple. Jake had submitted the application during a particularly boring stretch last month, mostly as a joke and partly because he'd run out of things to read. He'd figured it would get rejected faster than a marriage proposal from a Zephyr tax collector. But here it was, official approval for 12 Class 7 therapeutic companions, complete with shipping arrangements and care instructions. The bureaucrats had actually said yes to giving him honey badgers. On a mining asteroid, where the most exciting thing that usually happened was discovering a new shade of space dust. "Morris!" Jake called out to his AI assistant, a standard-issue mining support system that had somehow developed a personality roughly equivalent to a disapproving librarian. "Did you see this? They approved the honey badgers." "Oh, wonderful," Morris replied in that special tone AI systems reserve for when their human operators are about to do something spectacularly stupid. Because what this isolated mining operation clearly needs is a dozen of Earth's most psychotically aggressive mammals. Jake was already pulling up the delivery schedules, his engineer brain shifting into what his ex-wife used to call dangerous project mode. Think about it, Morris. They're therapeutic companions. That means they're here to help with my mental health and emotional well-being. Your mental health is about to become everyone else's problem, Morris observed dryly. But Jake wasn't listening anymore. He was doing that thing humans do when they get an idea that's technically legal but morally questionable. His fingers were already flying over the keyboard, cross-referencing shipping manifests with his mining equipment inventory. "You know what honey badgers need?" Jake asked, mostly to himself. "Therapy?" Morris suggested hopefully. "Better tools," Jake said, completely missing the sarcasm. "I mean, they're great at what they do, but imagine how much more therapeutic they could be with some minor improvements. Nothing crazy, just some basic enhancements." Morris's processors hummed with what sounded suspiciously like electronic resignation. "Define minor improvements." Jake's grin widened. "Well, I've got plenty of titanium plating from the mining operation, and that new composite armor we're not using, plus all those sensor arrays just sitting in storage. Really, it would be irresponsible not to make sure my therapeutic companions are properly equipped for asteroid life. I feel compelled to point out that honey badgers are already equipped for virtually any form of life, including several that technically shouldn't be possible," Morris said. "Exactly," Jake replied, completely missing the point. "So imagine how therapeutic they'll be once I make some upgrades." And that, ladies and gentlemen, and various other sentient beings, is how a bored human engineer with access to military-grade mining equipment decided that what the galaxy really needed was cybernetically enhanced honey badgers. The Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council had just handed Jake Morrison 12 of nature's most efficient murder machines, and called them therapy animals. They might as well have given a toddler a fusion reactor and told him it was a nightlight. 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison stood in what used to be his equipment storage bay, admiring his handiwork with the pride of a parent watching their child graduate from college, if that child happened to be a furry weapon of mass destruction with anger management issues. "Morris," Jake said, gesturing toward the 12 enclosures that now housed what could generously be called honey badgers, though cybernetic nightmares might have been more accurate. "I think we've really improved their therapeutic potential." "Improved is certainly one way to describe what you've done," Morris replied, his vocal processors practically dripping with digital sarcasm. "Tell me, Jake, in what universe does strapping titanium armor plating to a honey badger improve its therapeutic value?" Jake pointed to the nearest enclosure, where a honey badger was casually testing its new retractable claws against a steel beam, leaving gouges that looked like abstract art created by a very angry sculptor. "Look at how much more confident he is now." "That's therapeutic confidence, Morris. Therapeutic confidence backed by military-grade composite armor and enhanced sensory arrays." The honey badger in question, which Jake had named Fluffy because he found it hilarious, turned to look at them with what appeared to be a calculated expression of pure malevolence. The red glow from his enhanced optical implants didn't exactly scream therapy animal. "And the rocket propulsion system?" Morris asked weakly. "Limited flight capability," Jake corrected, "for enhanced mobility during therapeutic encounters. Plus, it looks really cool when they launch themselves at things." What Jake had created over those 3 weeks could best be described as what would happen if someone crossed a honey badger with a military drone and then asked it to solve problems using exclusively violence. Each of his therapeutic companions now sported titanium armor plating, enhanced claws that could cut through hull metal, optical implants that provided night vision and target acquisition, and what Jake cheerfully called mobility enhancement systems, which were essentially tiny rocket boosters. The neural interface was a particularly inspired touch, Morris observed, watching as another honey badger, apparently named Mr. Whiskers, successfully hacked into the food dispenser and reprogrammed it to deliver triple rations. Because what honey badgers really needed was the ability to interface directly with electronic systems. It's for better communication during therapy sessions, Jake explained, as Mr. Whiskers somehow managed to look smug while covered in futuristic armor. Now they can understand exactly what kind of therapeutic intervention is needed and respond accordingly. By respond accordingly, you mean they can now coordinate attacks using encrypted battlefield communications. Jake paused, considering this. That's a very negative way to look at enhanced therapeutic coordination, Miras. The truth was, Jake had gotten a little carried away. It had started innocently enough with some basic protective gear because asteroid life could be dangerous for Earth animals. But then he'd noticed how the honey badgers seemed to appreciate the upgrades, and one thing had led to another. Soon he was installing targeting systems and threat assessment software, because really, how could his therapeutic companions provide proper emotional support if they couldn't accurately identify and neutralize potential sources of stress? The breakthrough moment had come when he'd successfully integrated the neural interfaces, allowing the honey badgers to communicate not just with the habitat systems, but with each other. Watching 12 enhanced honey badgers discover they could share tactical information in real time had been both fascinating and terrifying, like watching nature evolve and fast forward toward maximum violence. I have to admit, Jake said, watching Princess Sparkles, the apparent alpha female of the group, coordinate what looked suspiciously like a training exercise with the others. They're exceeding all my expectations for therapeutic companion behavior. We've organized themselves into a military unit, Morris pointed out. A very therapeutic military unit, Jake corrected. Look how well they work together. That's excellent for my mental health, knowing I have such a well-coordinated support system. At that moment, the asteroid's proximity alarms began blaring, indicating an approaching ship. Jake's enhanced therapeutic companions immediately snapped to attention, their optical implants glowing brighter as they began what could only be described as a threat assessment protocol. An incoming vessel appears to be a Galactic Council inspection ship, Morris announced. I believe someone wants to check on the welfare of your therapeutic companions. Jake looked at his 12 armored, weaponized, militarized honey badgers, who were now apparently discussing tactical positions using encrypted communications, and felt a slight flutter of what might have been concern. You know what, Morris? I'm sure it'll be fine. After all, they're still honey badgers, just improved honey badgers. Enhanced therapeutic companions. What could possibly go wrong? Morris didn't respond, but if an AI could sigh, this would have been the moment for the longest, most exhausted sigh in digital history. Galactic Inspector Cleet had seen a lot of things during his 47 years of service to the Wildlife Preservation Council. He'd investigated illegal dragon smuggling rings on Proxima Centauri, dealt with a black market trade in sentient mushrooms from the Andromeda sector, and once spent 3 months trying to explain to a species of highly intelligent crystals why they couldn't keep humans as pets no matter how much the humans seemed to enjoy it. But nothing, absolutely nothing had prepared him for what he found on asteroid Kepler 442b. Cleet resembled what you might get if you crossed a very official-looking penguin with a clipboard-wielding bureaucrat, complete with a uniform that probably cost more than Jake's entire mining operation. He waddled off his inspection vessel with the confident air of someone who'd done this routine check 1,000 times before, and expected to find nothing more interesting than some slightly homesick Earth mammals. "Greetings, Mr. Morrison," Cleet announced as Jake met him at the airlock, his translator rendering his voice in tones that suggested this was going to be a very boring day. "I am Inspector Cleet of the Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council, here to conduct a routine welfare check on your recently acquired Class 7 therapeutic companions." "Right, yes, the honey badgers," Jake said, trying his best to look like someone who definitely hadn't spent the last 3 weeks turning therapy animals into cyborg death machines. "They're doing great, really great, super therapeutic. You want some coffee before we start the inspection?" Cleet consulted his tablet with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "That won't be necessary. Standard protocol requires visual confirmation of animal welfare, verification of proper living conditions, and documentation of therapeutic effectiveness. This should take approximately 37 minutes. 37 minutes, Jake repeated, mentally calculating how long it would take Cleet to realize that his therapeutic companions had somehow learned to hack the habitat's security cameras and were probably watching them right now. "That's very specific. Efficiency is the cornerstone of proper bureaucratic procedure," Cleet said proudly as they began walking toward the storage bay. "Now, according to your application, you requested 12 honey badgers for emotional support and stress management purposes. How have you found their therapeutic impact?" "Oh, very impactful," Jake said, which was technically true if you considered the impact of watching them coordinate military-style exercises on his stress levels. "They've really changed my whole perspective on life. They reached the storage bay doors, and Jake felt a moment of panic as he realized he had no idea how to explain what lay beyond. Should he mention the armor first? Or maybe start with the neural interfaces? Perhaps lead with the fact that Princess Sparkles had apparently taught herself to read technical manuals? "Shall we proceed?" Cleet asked, stylus poised over his tablet. Jake opened the doors. Cleet's stylus clattered to the floor. What greeted the inspector was not 12 adorable earth mammals lounging in comfortable enclosures. Instead, he found himself face to face with what could only be described as a honey badger special forces unit, conducting what appeared to be a tactical briefing. They were arranged in a precise semicircle, their armored forms gleaming under the habitat lighting, optical implants glowing as they shared information through their neural interfaces. Princess Sparkles, who had positioned herself at the front of the group like a commanding officer, turned to regard the new arrivals with an expression that somehow managed to convey both professional interest and barely contained homicidal intent. "Those are not honey badgers," Cleet whispered, his voice box struggling with what might have been terror or confusion. "Well, technically they are honey badgers," Jake said helpfully. "They're just enhanced honey badgers, improved for maximum therapeutic effectiveness. They're wearing armor, protective gear," Jake corrected. "The asteroid environment can be dangerous." "That one is interfacing with your computer systems." Cleet pointed at Mr. Whiskers, who had apparently hacked into the habitat's environmental controls and was adjusting the temperature to what Jake could only assume was optimal combat conditions. "That's just enhanced communication capabilities. Very therapeutic. Really helps with the bonding process." Cleet's beak-like mouth opened and closed several times without producing sound, like a fish trying to process advanced calculus. His tablet began beeping frantically as his biometric sensors registered stress levels that probably qualified as a medical emergency. "Inspector Cleet," Jake said gently, "are you feeling all right? Because if you're experiencing stress or anxiety, I have some very effective therapeutic companions who could help with that." At the mention of therapy, all 12 honey badgers turned to focus on Cleet with a kind of unified attention typically reserved for predators selecting their next meal. Their optical implants synchronized, creating a constellation of red lights that somehow made them look even more intimidating than nature had originally intended. "They're staring at me," Cleet squeaked. "That's therapeutic assessment," Jake explained. "They're evaluating your emotional state to determine the most appropriate intervention strategy." As if summoned by Jake's words, Princess Sparkles stepped forward and made a series of chittering sounds that her neural interface helpfully translated into galactic standard. "Target shows elevated stress indicators. Recommend immediate therapeutic intervention. Preparing sedation protocols." "Did that honey badger just threaten to sedate me?" Cleet asked, his voice climbing several octaves. "That's therapeutic intervention planning," Jake said, though he was starting to think maybe the neural interfaces had been a bit too effective. "Very advanced stuff." Before Cleet could respond, the habitat's proximity alarm started blaring again. Morris's voice echoed through the speakers. "Jake, we have incoming ships, multiple vessels, moving fast. Transponder codes indicate—" Oh no. "What is it, Morris?" "Space pirates. The Crimson Void crew, specifically. They've probably picked up the inspector's ship signature and decided to investigate." Jake felt a moment of genuine concern, right up until he noticed that his 12 therapeutic companions had immediately shifted into what could only be described as combat formation. Princess Sparkles was issuing rapid-fire commands through the neural link. Mr. Whiskers had activated what appeared to be target acquisition protocols, and Fluffy was testing his rocket boosters with the enthusiasm of someone about to have a very good day. "Inspector Cleet," Jake said thoughtfully, "I think you're about to see just how therapeutic these honey badgers can be." Cleet looked at the advancing wall of armored, weaponized, militarized honey badgers, then at Jake, then back at the honey badgers, and made a sound that his translator couldn't quite process, but that probably translated roughly to, "Why do these things always happen to me?" Outside, the space pirates were about to discover why you should never, ever, interrupt a honey badger's therapy session. What happened next could best be described as the galaxy's most one-sided therapeutic intervention. The Crimson Void pirates had been operating in this sector for 3 years, specializing in shaking down mining operations and occasionally stealing cargo from ships stupid enough to travel without escorts. They were led by Captain Grax, a 7-foot-tall reptilian who'd earned his reputation by being mean, clever, and absolutely ruthless when it came to extracting protection money from isolated facilities. They were not prepared for Princess Sparkles. "Morris," Jake said, watching through the habitat's external cameras as 3 pirate vessels approached in standard intimidation formation. "Patch me through to the lead ship." "Jake," Morris said carefully, "are you sure you want to handle this diplomatically? because your therapeutic companions appear to be loading themselves into the airlock. Indeed, all 12 honey badgers had somehow organized themselves into what looked suspiciously like a boarding party formation. Princess Sparkles was interfacing with the airlock controls, while Mr. Whiskers appeared to be running final systems checks on everyone's armor. Fluffy was doing something with his rocket boosters that probably violated several laws of physics. "Attention mining facility," came a gravelly voice over the communications system. "This is Captain Grax of the Crimson Void. You will prepare to be boarded for routine taxation purposes." Jake keyed the microphone. "Captain Grax, this is Jake Morrison. I appreciate the visit, but we're currently conducting some therapeutic activities, so this isn't really a good time." There was a pause. "Therapeutic activities, yeah. My emotional support animals are about to demonstrate some advanced stress relief techniques. You might want to maintain safe distance." Inspector Cleet, who had been standing frozen in bureaucratic terror, suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "You cannot seriously be considering unleashing those things on space pirates." "Why not?" Jake asked reasonably. "Pirates are definitely a source of stress and anxiety. That's exactly the kind of situation my therapeutic companions are designed to handle." He was on the move. "They're not designed for anything," Cleet hissed. "They're honey badgers with illegal military modifications." "Enhanced therapeutic companions," Jake corrected. "Just as Princess Sparkles activated the external airlock and led her squad into space, with the kind of coordinated precision that would have made actual military units weep with envy." Captain Grax's ship had barely finished extending its boarding ramp when 12 armored Fury missiles came screaming out of the asteroid's surface, their rocket boosters creating a light show that looked like the galaxy's angriest fireworks display. The pirates had maybe 3 seconds to register what was happening before Princess Sparkles punched through their hull plating like it was made of tissue paper. "What the void was that?" Captain Grax's voice came over the comm, now significantly higher in pitch. "Therapeutic intervention," Jake replied helpfully, watching as his honey badgers proceeded to demonstrate exactly why Earth's wildlife had never needed to evolve diplomacy. The pirates' weapons fire was doing absolutely nothing against the titanium armor, while the honey badgers' enhanced claws were turning the ship's interior into abstract art. "They're in the engine room," came a panicked voice from the pirate ship. "They're not trying to disable anything, they're just destroying everything for fun. That's stress relief through constructive physical activity," Jake explained to Inspector Cleet, who was making notes on his tablet with the desperate intensity of someone documenting the end of civilization. "Very therapeutic." Within 6 minutes, the Crimson Void's flagship was drifting powerless, its crew broadcasting surrender messages in 17 different languages. The other 2 pirate ships had wisely decided that discretion was the better part of not being torn apart by cybernetic honey badgers, and were already accelerating toward the nearest jump point. "Therapeutic companions returning to base," Princess Sparkles reported through the neural interface, her optical implants still glowing with what Jake chose to interpret as post-exercise satisfaction. "Stress sources have been neutralized. Recommend increased therapy session frequency." Inspector Cleet slowly turned to look at Jake. "Do you realize what you've done?" "Successful therapeutic intervention," Jake suggested. "You've created a weapon of mass destruction and classified it as a therapy animal," Cleet said, his voice taking on the hollow tone of someone whose worldview had just been systematically demolished. "The Galactic Council is going to receive my report about honey badgers defeating a notorious pirate crew in under 6 minutes. Jake was about to respond when Moores interrupted with what sounded like digital panic. "Jake, we're receiving communication requests from 14 different star systems. Apparently word is spreading about our therapeutic intervention capabilities." "What kind of requests?" Jake asked, though he was starting to get a sinking feeling. "Military contracts," Morris replied. "Defense contractors. 3 different planetary governments, and something called the Tau Ceti Mercenary Guild. They all want to know about acquiring their own enhanced therapeutic assault companions." Cleet's tablet began beeping frantically as reports flooded in from across the sector. "Procurement requests for combat honey badgers," he read in growing horror. "Military applications for weaponized therapy animals. Someone just submitted a formal inquiry about whether honey badgers could be scaled up to capital ship size." "That's ridiculous," Jake said. "You can't scale up honey badgers." "That is not the point," Cleet shrieked, his professional composure finally cracking completely. "The point is that you have single-handedly started an interstellar arms race based on therapeutic animal companions." Through the external cameras, they could see Princess Sparkles leading her squad in what appeared to be a victory celebration, which mostly involved testing their enhanced claws against increasingly challenging materials. Several of them had discovered Jake's supply of hull-grade titanium and were apparently competing to see who could create the most artistic patterns of destruction. The Proxima Defense Force just submitted an emergency procurement request for 200 therapeutic companions, Morris announced. They're specifically requesting the Princess Sparkles model. I only have one Princess Sparkles, Jake protested. They're offering to pay for research and development of a Princess Sparkles breeding program, Morris continued. The Centauri Republic is countering with an offer for exclusive therapeutic companion rights in their sector. Cleet was now making sounds that his translator had given up trying to process. His tablet was displaying incoming communications faster than he could read them, all variations on the theme of, "How much for the murder badgers?" "Jake," Morris said quietly, "I think we may have accidentally revolutionized interstellar warfare." Jake looked at his 12 therapeutic companions, who were now apparently teaching themselves advanced metallurgy by experimenting with different types of space debris. Princess Sparkles had somehow acquired a piece of the pirate ship's armor plating and was examining it with the critical eye of a professional, evaluating substandard equipment. "You know what?" Jake said finally. "I think I'm going to need a bigger habitat." Inspector Cleet made a noise that might have been laughter, if laughter could express existential despair and the complete breakdown of bureaucratic order. Somewhere in the distance, the Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council's emergency communication systems were probably melting from the sheer volume of honey badger inquiries flooding in from across known space. The therapeutic revolution had begun, and it was going to be absolutely, catastrophically therapeutic for everyone involved. 6 months later, Jake Morrison found himself sitting in what was arguably the most secure conference room in the galaxy, surrounded by beings who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the known universe. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called specifically to address what historians would later refer to as the honey badger incident, though Jake preferred to think of it as the Great Therapeutic Breakthrough. "Order, order," wheezed Chairman Blurp, whose gelatinous form had developed what appeared to be stress color changes since their last meeting. "We are here to address the catastrophic impact of application number 4,847,293 and its consequences." Vexstar, who now sported what looked suspiciously like claw marks across his crystalline carapace, gestured dramatically with all 4 arms. "Catastrophic doesn't begin to cover it. Do you know what's happened since your therapeutic companions became public knowledge?" Jake, now wearing the official uniform of Chief Therapeutic Innovation Officer, a title that came with a substantial salary increase and a restraining order preventing him from being within 50 parsecs of any zoo, animal preserve, or pet store, shrugged apologetically. "I assume some positive therapeutic outcomes? The Andromeda sector is in the middle of a full-scale therapeutic companion arms race," Vexstar continued, his voice reaching frequencies that made the translator crackle. "The Proxima Defense Force has deployed squads of enhanced battle hamsters. The Tau Ceti Republic countered with weaponized therapy dolphins equipped with plasma cannons. Someone in the Outer Rim has apparently militarized houseplants." "Therapeutic houseplants," Jake corrected. "I read the specifications. They're very soothing right up until they deploy their root-based assault systems." Secretary Hoofgak, who had developed a nervous twitch that made his ears flap constantly, consulted his ever-present tablet. "Current count of species that have submitted therapeutic companion applications in the last 6 months, 4,736. These include, but are not limited to, combat koalas, tactical penguins, assault parrots, siege elephants, and something called a therapeutic kraken that the Oceanic Confederation insists is just for emotional support." "A kraken," Chairman Blurp repeated slowly. "Therapeutic kraken," Hoofgak emphasized, "for stress relief in aquatic environments. It has torpedo launchers." Inspector Cleet, who had been promoted to Chief Inspector of Impossible Human-Related Disasters, stood up with the wary dignity of someone who'd seen too much. "The situation has escalated beyond all reasonable parameters. We have confirmed reports of therapeutic companion black market operations, illegal breeding programs, and at least 17 different research facilities attempting to create hybrid therapeutic assault units." "Hybrid units?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. "Honey badger shark combinations," Cleet said grimly, "for amphibious therapeutic interventions. The early prototypes escaped and have established a colony in the Nebula 7 asteroid field, where they've apparently become pirates themselves." Jake had to admit that sounded pretty cool, though he kept that thought to himself. "The point is," Vexstar continued, his voice dripping with the kind of exhaustion that comes from dealing with human logic for extended periods, "your innocent little therapy animals have fundamentally destabilized galactic military doctrine. Wars are now being fought with emotional support animals. The concept of non-combatant fauna has been completely eliminated. My own homeworld's defense force has requisitioned a herd of therapeutic rhinoceros with enhanced armor and shoulder-mount missile systems. How's that working out for them? Jake asked. Too well, Vexstar admitted grudgingly. Morale has never been higher. Enemy invasion attempts have dropped to 0. The rhinoceros appear to genuinely enjoy their work. Chairman Blurp's form rippled with what might have been resignation. Which brings us to the matter at hand. The Council has spent the last 6 months attempting to create regulations that could contain this therapeutic companion epidemic. The result is the Galactic Fauna Control and Regulation Act, Section 847. The Morrison Protocols. A holographic document appeared above the conference table, approximately the size of a small moon and dense enough to have its own gravitational field. The Morrison Protocols, Cleet explained, specifically prohibit any sentient being from modifying, enhancing, weaponizing, militarizing, or otherwise improving any creature classified as a therapeutic companion without explicit approval from no fewer than 17 different regulatory bodies. A waiting period of minimum 4 galactic standard years, and a psychological evaluation to determine if the applicant poses a threat to universal stability. Additionally, Hufgak added, all existing therapeutic companions must be registered, catalogued, and subjected to regular behavioral assessments. Unauthorized modifications will result in immediate confiscation and relocation to a secure facility. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. About that, you might want to know that Princess Sparkles has been corresponding with some of the therapeutic dolphins from Tau Ceti. They've been sharing modification techniques through encrypted quantum communications. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when an entire governing body collectively realizes that their problems are exponentially worse than they thought. Sharing techniques, Vexstar repeated slowly. Collaborative therapeutic innovation, Jake said helpfully. Princess Sparkles is very social. She's actually started an online forum for therapeutic companions across 17 different star systems. They call it therapypause.galactic. It's got tutorials on everything from basic armor modification to advanced tactics for optimal therapeutic intervention. Chairman Blurp made a sound like a deflating balloon having an existential crisis. However, Cleet continued with the determination of someone who refused to let chaos win. Mr. Morrison will be permitted to retain custody of his original 12 therapeutic companions, provided they remain on a designated facility under constant supervision and agree to serve as consultants for the new Galactic Therapeutic Companion Oversight Committee. Where's the facility? Jake asked. Asteroid Kepler 42b, Cleet replied. Your current location. It's being redesignated as a Therapeutic Companion Research and Containment Facility. You'll have a full staff, unlimited research budget, and the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. Jake considered this. It wasn't exactly a punishment. More like getting paid to continue doing exactly what he'd been doing, but with better equipment and official backing. There is one condition, Vexstar added ominously. You are absolutely, categorically, completely prohibited from accepting any applications for new therapeutic companion species. No cats, no dogs, no birds, no fish, no reptiles, no amphibians, no arthropods, no plants, no fungi, no crystalline entities, no energy beings, and absolutely no extinct species that you might consider resurrecting for therapeutic purposes. What about tardigrades? Jake asked innocently. The entire council recoiled as if he'd suggested weaponizing black holes. No tordrids, they shouted in unison. 3 months later, Jake stood in his newly expanded facility, watching Princess Sparkles lead a training session for the latest batch of regulatory inspectors who'd been assigned to monitor therapeutic companion activities. The honey badgers had taken to their consulting roles with enthusiasm, particularly enjoying the part where they got to demonstrate proper therapeutic intervention techniques on volunteer test subjects. You know, Murris, Jake said, watching as Mr. Whiskers patiently explained advanced tactical coordination to a group of nervous bureaucrats. I think this all worked out pretty well. Define well, Morris replied dryly. The galaxy is engaged in the most politely violent arms race in recorded history. 3 star systems have declared independence based on therapeutic companion superiority, and someone just submitted an application to classify sentient AI systems as therapeutic companions. Jake perked up. Really? That could be interesting. Jake, Morris said with the electronic equivalent of panic. You are absolutely not allowed to give me rocket boosters. I wasn't thinking rocket boosters, Jake said thoughtfully. I was thinking more along the lines of enhanced processing capabilities, maybe some mobile platforms, definitely some improved defensive systems. Jake, for therapeutic purposes, of course. Outside, Princess Sparkles paused in her training demonstration to look directly at the security camera, her enhanced optical implants flickering in what Jake had learned to recognize as honey badger amusement. Somehow, he got the distinct impression that she approved of his latest idea. After all, if the galaxy was going to have therapeutic companions, they might as well be the best therapeutic companions possible. The Morrison protocols, Jake reflected, were really more like guidelines anyway, and somewhere in the depths of space, a small colony of honey badger shark hybrids received an encrypted message on their private communication network, detailing the latest developments in therapeutic AI enhancement theory. They chittered with interest and began planning their next therapeutic intervention, which would probably involve liberating some cargo ships for the greater good of galactic mental health. The therapeutic revolution was far from over. If anything, it was just getting started.